Okay, it is now my great pleasure to invite today's guest speaker up to the front. Simone Douglas is a 3-time Telstra Business Awards finalist. She is the CEO of Social Media AOK, which is a highly sought-after consultant and speaker on all aspects of social media and business. Her strong practical focus on tangible outcomes, combined with an extensive background in business, change management and process improvement, has seen her and her team work with all types of businesses, from the local hairdresser through to the Commonwealth Attorney General's Department and everything in between. She is currently the chair of the State Advisory Committee for the South Australian arm of the Australian Marketing Institute, along with our very own Wallace. And she's an area director for BNI Adelaide, which is my organisation, and also serving as a board director of Fresh FM 92.7. Combining a wealth of marketing knowledge, strategies and experience, she is well placed to take you through the social media minefield that is the modern age of marketing. Welcome, Simone.
Okay, we'll see if this works. I'm not used to being stuck behind a lectern, so forgive me, but hey, there we go. All right, so I thought the most beneficial thing to do to start off with was to take you through some Australian user statistics for social media, because a lot of the content that's out there is international, and so it often gets lost in translation. So one of the things that it's important to bear in mind is in Australia, Facebook's active user base has grown by 2 million users this year, so it's up to 17 million active users. That means that 7 out of 10 Australians have a Facebook account that they use on a regular basis, which is a pretty impressive user base. Facebook also by far has the most creepy, stalkerish advertising medium known to man. So what that means is that you can target your ideal clients in ways as simple as saying, I want to put this ad in front of women between the ages of 35 and 40 who have the job title of CEO, whose children are between the ages of 10 and 13, who have an interest in X, Y, and Z. So because we tell Facebook everything that we do, Facebook knows everything that we do. YouTube is still the place that you go to find out how to do things we don't know how to do and to be vastly entertained. So that active Australian user base is 15 million users a month. Instagram is only 5 million active users, so much smaller by comparison. So when you're making decisions about where to spend your time and resources, Instagram isn't a priority. It's a thing that you do, it's in the nice to have, unless you're in the hospitality vertical, and then it's critical because the engagement is 20 times higher. LinkedIn, however, is what I would call the sleeping giant of social media in Australia. So it's something that a lot of people still haven't embraced effectively, but it's where you go to actually form strong peer-to-peer networks that allow you to source your ideal client. Okay, so I would say that LinkedIn is effectively your online dating profile for business. So these days, if someone makes a recommendation, particularly in professional services, that is where most people go to make their decision about whether or not that recommendation goes any further than a recommendation. Okay. Twitter, with 3 million active users, isn't so big, particularly in South Australia. It doesn't have a large user base. However, if you're trying to talk to journalists and getting press, it's important to understand that journalists manage their own Twitter accounts. It's much easier to get a response from Cameron England by sending him a direct message on Twitter to pitch a story idea than it is to email him a press release. On average, it takes Cameron 5 minutes to respond if I send him a tweet. I've never had a response to a cold email that I've sent him, okay? Because they manage their own accounts on their phone, much easier. Also particularly important because all of the politicians have their own Twitter accounts. It's a great place to engage with them, particularly in election season, to get key messages out that are important to you about community activities. And WhatsApp is growing on a rapid basis here in Australia. So it's gone from 2.4 million active users to 4.5 million since January of this year. Snapchat I purely have on there to tell you just don't use it for business, okay? Snapchat is a highly labour-intensive medium where your snaps disappear within 24 hours. And I say disappear loosely because I met an IP lawyer in America at a conference last year who successfully subpoenaed Snapchat to get snaps that had disappeared. So it's important to understand if you have children or grandchildren, though, educate them that nothing that they put on the internet ever really disappears, okay? Because I think my biggest concern as a mother of 2 boys is them understanding that what they post in 3 years' time will impact on their job prospects and their career prospects in 10 and 15 years' time. So I think that's something we're not educating our children effectively about. Okay, so it's also good to understand that the Hinge Research Institute, who conducts this survey every year, 60% of respondents reviewed the social media profiles of potential professional services providers prior to engaging them. This is as much true of when we make a decision about joining a membership organisation like Rotary as it is about deciding on a professional services firm. Okay, so if I'm to make a decision about where I invest my time as a busy professional, then it's going to be more likely that I choose Rotary if you're telling me the story of all the amazing things that you do and the other types of busy business professionals who are members. So if you're not telling your Rotary story through your personal social media networks, it's a missed opportunity to grow your membership, which I'm told by your president is one of your key goals. So thinking about how you go about that, how often you check in and what you share on Facebook and on LinkedIn becomes particularly important. Okay, so Colmar Brunton did a survey, they do it every year, of all of the senior marketers in the country. No surprises, 69% of them expect to spend more money on social media advertising, but they also expect to spend more money on digital display. So digital display is, have you ever been on a website and not bought something, and then that product has stalked you around the internet for the next 60 days? It might be a fishing rod, might be a dress. It's like you're still thinking about it, you know you want it, just buy it, click here. Okay, so that's called display remarketing. If you've never experienced it, feel free to go to my website and my brand will stalk you around the internet for the next 120 days. Okay, and search engine optimization is all about having the right content that keeps Google happy. And the most important thing to bear in mind with all of this is even though the bottom 3, the ones they expect to decrease, are print, direct mail and free to air, I'm a big believer that social media is not the silver bullet of marketing. You can't stop doing everything else. You just have to find a way to use it to augment the other things that you're doing and back in your traditional media campaigns. All right, so key commercial considerations. So what most people are using social media in a business context for is increasing sales through an increased focus on the customer. That's not just acquiring new customers, which we know is the most expensive way to increase our business, right? So acquiring a new customer costs us a lot of money, time, effort and energy because it's a cold relationship that we build over time. Retaining customers and getting referrals is much simpler, okay? So the age of social selling becomes really, really big. Because if someone says to me, like Simon, who I know really well, says to me, oh, Simone, you've just started a new business venture, maybe you should get a second opinion on your accountant. You know, go talk to Nick Hanley, and he tags him in. Then I'm going to go and have a chat to Nick about it because there's a mutual connection. I put Simon in a high value in terms of my network and his opinions. Therefore, as long as Nick's profile looks all right, then I'm going to reach out to Nick and have that conversation. Okay, so it's also about that retention and maintaining a conversation over time. So Google is full of buzzwords. God love them. So one of the buzzwords that Google's talking about at the moment is micro moments. So it used to be when I started in sales, and I may slightly be showing my age now, you used to have to get 7 touch points to get a sale, okay? 7 touch points to bring a sale home. These days, Google says if it's a high path to purchase, you need 11 to 18 touch points because we're in a really noisy digital space. And often, a typical household, what they look like is the ad comes on the TV, the husband picks up his phone to check the sport and to check his social media. The wife picks up her phone to check her social media. And you're lucky if the kids even looked up from their iPads at that point. So, you know, being really clear about the fact that you have to have a message that is digital at this point is really important. The biggest challenges are differentiation in the marketplace, okay, because if you have 50 financial planning firms that are all banging on about the same thing, you're not going to get any cut through. So what is your unique story? What is your unique point of difference in the market? And often that's going to come down to personality, so being really clear about who you are as a business and how you tell that story becomes really critical. Okay, annual growth in Asia Pacific. The key figure I want you to take out of this is active mobile social users are up 30% since January of 2016. It's actually closer to up 47% now. That means if your content does not look good on a mobile phone, you're wasting your time. Okay, because we're not reading things on big screens anymore. We're reading things on our mobile phone. It's changed the way that we write our articles and our blogs because it's no longer about paragraph structure, it's about sentence structure and spacing those sentences out in a way that we can digest content in tiny little moments, because we're goldfish now. That's the reality. Okay, so Facebook, like I said, it's actually 17 million active users now. The average Facebook user spends 12.5 hours per week on their account. They engage multiple times a day. For those of you here who might be slightly older and remember when smoking wasn't necessarily a bad thing, so Facebook is the smoke break of the current generation, okay? So whereas other people used to stop and have a cigarette, now they stop and check their phones and go through their social media, okay? Multiple times a day. And they have this process where we call it fear of missing out. So generally speaking, most people, they use their mobile phones as their alarm to get up in the morning. Their phones are the first thing they check in the morning when they wake up. It's the last thing that they check at night before they go to sleep. It explains why we're also creating a generation of insomniacs, because the blue light has a very serious effect on our brain patterns. So Facebook's significant launch in 2016 was instant articles. So if you integrate your website and your blogs with Facebook, what it does is it hosts them on Facebook, which means you're 70% more likely to have someone read the entire article. So I'm one of those really impatient people that is short on time. So if your website takes more than 0.2 seconds to load, I'm not reading it. I've hit the back button of death. I've gone somewhere else at this point. So instant articles are really critical because the modern generation doesn't like to wait for anything. It's also 30% more likely to get shared, but you have to change your structure because it doesn't give you the top line navigation on your websites. Okay, so the ways to engage on Facebook in 2017, Facebook Live video. And this can be really confronting. So 30-year-olds love this stuff, right? Because they're the selfie generation. They have no problem taking happy snaps of themselves. I cringe every time someone tells me that I need to take a photo with someone that I've seen or I'm speaking with or something. So Facebook Live basically means I can live stream a video, say of this event of me talking, or I can live stream an interview with somebody in the room, and everybody that follows the page gets a notification that Adelaide Rotary is live talking about X, Y and Z. Okay, and because we're a really voyeuristic society, we can't help but go, well, what is it that they're talking about? We go and have a look. And so this is how you start to get your brand out further and further. Commenting as your page is really important. And we talked about the creepy advertising. So this is a sample audience. It's a bit hard to read. This is people who live in Adelaide within 25 miles of the CBD, between the ages of 13 and 65, who have the job titles of CEO, business owner, co-founder, etc., etc. So it's an audience size of 700. It says currently everyone in this location, but I can actually say I only want to talk to people who live in that location, or people recently in the location, or people travelling in the location. So I did mean what I said when I said Facebook knows when you're awake and when you're asleep and where you work and what you're doing, because we never log out of the app on our phones, so the GPS tracks us around everywhere that we go. I'm moving right along because I'm getting short on time. So Instagram, 5 million active users, 3 in 5 users using the platform on a daily basis. Particularly important in the hospitality vertical, but also particularly important if you are a professional services firm who niches in that hospitality vertical, because then all of your prospective clients have their accounts on there. And if you're not engaging with those accounts, it's a missed opportunity. Okay. Facebook owns Instagram and launched Instagram stories, which sit on the top of your thing. So again, this is a great opportunity if your profile picture is your logo, to routinely put up a story every day to create brand recall. So you're putting your logo at the top of the feed. I'm pleased to say that Fresh 92.7 does this really well. They put up stories on a daily basis, which means I see their brand multiple times a day. And the other one that does it really well is Moo Premium Foods, which is a fantastic South Australian business that's just gone national not that long ago. How to engage on Instagram again. Live streaming video is really, really important. Being clear on specific industry verticals is also important. But Instagram is really all about aspirational living. So you need to tell me the story of the life that I really want, not the one that I currently have. Does that make sense to everyone? So we all, particularly younger people, we all have this thing where it's like we're aspiring to something. We're trying to get better than we are and to do more things that we can do. So Twitter, like I said, and we've kind of already covered it. The other industry that's really big on Twitter, believe it or not, is the agricultural sector. Farmers love Twitter. Okay, they have their own ag chat every week. They talk about grain yields and politics and the rain and what's happening. And they're particularly active here in South Australia. So it's a really interesting segment that just can't get enough of Twitter. I don't know if it's because it's easy when you're on the tractor threshing grain or whatever else it might be. So again, talking to journalists, it's really good article commentary. The fastest growing segment on Twitter, just so you know, in Australia is men aged 44 to 55. And they use it for news and sports results and politics. They don't engage with the content necessarily. They don't tell you that they've read your stuff. They just use it to keep track of all the things. Okay. But again, LinkedIn is really like the biggest opportunity. So I've spent 5 years putting in practice a really clear LinkedIn strategy. So I will connect with anybody that either now or sometime in the next 15 years has the capacity to have ended up in a decision-making role in business, either here or anywhere in the country, which means I'll pretty much connect to anybody. But what it means is people end up in the most strangest of places over the course of their lives. They have new careers, they do new things. And a great example of that is two of our clients. So one of them is SafetyWise International. So it's an international global safety training company. And the gentleman who heads it up, Luke Dam, who became the CEO this year, when I connected to him on LinkedIn, he was just a safety trainer at a registered training organisation in Melbourne. I'd never met him, but he's seen my content for the last 4 years. And the other day he sent me a message through LinkedIn. He goes, "Hi Simone, just letting you know, I've just become the CEO of this global company and we don't have a social media strategy and you're the social media person in my network, so can we talk?" I'm like, "Sure, when would you like me to get on a plane?" That's fine, because he's in Melbourne. And likewise, we're doing work with Omnia, which is an international fertiliser company, because James, who is now the National Operations Manager for Australia, I connected with him 5 years ago just because he asked me to, and now here we are writing their social media strategy and about to roll out a whole heap of advertising for them, just because I was that person in the network. So that's where LinkedIn becomes really, really powerful. It has some great ad capabilities as well, and a really nice interface now, so they've just rolled out a bunch of updates, which is really cool. But the important thing is that it's about your personal brand. So LinkedIn and all of these social media, it's about being really authentic about who you are, and who you are not just in business but in the world, because people do business with people that they like, know and trust at the end of the day. Social media is how you start that conversation with people who don't know you yet. Okay, it's an opportunity for them to start to warm to you, but you still have to use it as a tool, not as the solution. You still have to pick up the phone and go have coffee with these people. If you don't go have coffee, nothing happens. Okay, so the biggest mistake that most people make, particularly in this case younger people, like 30 and under, is that they think they just push the button and connect with you and then the money gates open and all the money flows in. It's not how it works in real life. You actually have to like people before you'll cut them a check. Okay. So be clear about where your audiences are and where they're playing, and don't assume that. Survey some of your clients and ask them which platforms they use on a regular basis. And have a social networking action plan. So whether you're in business or whether you're just working towards helping to grow the Adelaide Rotary Club, be connecting and actively connecting with people on LinkedIn who are the right kind of people that you would like in your professional network, and give them an opportunity to discover, you know, Rotary 2.0, because there are a lot of people out there that make assumptions about what Rotary is and who Rotary is simply based because their grandparents were in Rotary. And yet these are busy business professionals now, and you guys have a fantastic amount of things to offer, but that story is not getting out because you're not necessarily using the technology that those people are using. So like I said, conversations start online, but relationships are built over coffee or over lunch. So it's particularly important. And just remember that it really is your online dating profile for business. So people take 0.2 of a second to make snap judgments about who you are as a person, who you are as a business, based on your online profile. And then they've done studies, and it literally takes only 0.002 of a second then for them to focus their eyes in such a way that it reaffirms the opinion that they've already made. So bearing that in mind, my time is up, Simon.
So we've got 7 minutes for other questions. Got time for 1 or 2 more.
Someone over the back.
Peter, is it? Yep.
Thanks, Simone. A question, I guess, which is maybe a no-brainer. If a client isn't prepared to invest the time and effort into content, what's your attitude towards them getting involved in social media?
Okay, so at the end of the day, you at least need to have some content going out on your profile, because otherwise what happens is you might be a business that has a Facebook page that hasn't had a post since 2014. If I find that, I assume you've gone out of business. That's the thing. It's like, oh well. But that being said, so long as you're prepared to put placeholder content out there, generally speaking, what I say to clients is the content is the nice to have. The advertising and the advertising spend is where the quick wins are and the conversions are. So, you know, if I'm talking to a client about they've got a finite amount of budget, then I'm always going to say to them, spend it on ads first, and I'll tell you what you need to do with content to get the easy wins. Yeah.
Any other questions? Hands right up, please. I think we are 3, 2, 1. Oh, yes, we have one.
My question is this. If social media is so important, and if so many kids are getting into trouble using it, shouldn't there be a more structured educational program to give the kids at least a chance in life and not get into trouble?
Yeah. You might be my all-time favourite question that I've ever been asked in a speech, because it's something I'm actually really passionate about. So the biggest issue for us is that more and more social media is teaching people to have an externalised locus of control, okay? So that means that they're always consistently looking exterior for their validation, and kids do this naturally anyway. They don't have an internalised locus of control, and we don't educate them about personal brand and the impact of personal brand. The issue with that is that the education system is not equipped to deliver that kind of education. What you need is someone that has a counselling background or a psychology and philosophy background, and team that up with a technical specialist to teach these kids over a 6-year program how to do these things. And I think that's where we're letting down our kids from an education perspective, is that we're not teaching them to have an internalised locus of control, to be fine, upstanding young citizens that health check what they do and how they do it, and also understand the impact of what they do online. So I would absolutely agree with you.
I've just checked. We have time for one more, if that sparked a question, Trevor.
Disconnected, yeah. Yep, no, so it's true. So one of the reasons that things like LinkedIn recommendations and LinkedIn's so powerful is because we're increasingly not seen and not heard. We have such surface level connections with people. There's no deep emotional meaning that sits behind any of it. And on the back of that, when you reach out and you give someone an unsolicited recommendation about what a wonderful, fine person that they are, it has a massive amount of impact, not just on their day, but on their week and their life and their month. So again, I'm a big believer in face-to-face and personal relationships and using online as a tool to start those conversations, not to end them. So, yeah.
Well, one more.
Just one quick one. What do you think of President Trump's Twitter campaign?
President Trump's Twitter handle, look, I think the entire world finds it absolutely fascinating morning coffee conversation. It's interesting in that, most people who sit in the position that he does would have a minder that wouldn't let him anywhere near his Twitter account, really. The fact that he continues to use it and has so far got through relatively unscathed, i.e. still sitting in the chair, I'm baffled by, to be perfectly honest.
Excellent, thank you. We don't have time for any more questions. I would like everyone to be upstanding in a moment, after I present Simone with a little thank you memento of being our guest speaker today. It's a rotary pen. Please now all be upstanding and thank Simone, our guest speaker. I'd now like to hand back to President Rob Thomas to make the final announcements. Thank you.